Hello, everyone. I'm really honored today to host you all on my Facebook live talk, and I'm honored also to host Scott Greenlee from USA. He's a 2007 JCI World President. He started the JCI journey in 1991, and he served also as the local president in Grand Rapids in the Michigan state in US. He visited 80 countries, and actually he's the president of GREENLEE consulting firm. I'm really honored again to host you, Scott. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I've always enjoyed the friendship and the camaraderie and the brotherhood that you and I have had. You've done a lot in JCI and certainly in your career. So it's great to join you today.
Of course, I have a great memory with you because I was introduced to JCI, to Junior Chamber International, by you in 2007 when you visited JCI Tunisia as JCI World President in your official visit. So it was a great memory for me.
That was great. I enjoyed Tunisia so much. I've been to Tunisia 3 times. It's been too long since I've been there. I need to visit again, I think. But that was a wonderful visit to Tunisia. We went to many cities. I was there for, I think, 4.5 days, which is actually a long visit for a JCI president. Typically, you're in for a couple days and you're on to the next country. But you had so many members and so many sponsors and governmental organizations that were aware of JCI and actively engaged that we couldn't hold it to only 2 or 3 days. We had to stay there longer. So it was great to meet you then and see so many of your fellow JCI members.
We'll be back to JCI later. Now let's talk a little bit about the situation because United States of America started the confinement a little bit late comparing to other countries like Tunisia. Today, it's 4th of May, 2020, and today Tunisian people and in other countries also they are back to work progressively because it's just like a part of the confinement. So the situation, how things are going on actually in the United States, because we heard a lot of things, and I think you, as an American citizen, you are a little bit sad, maybe because you lost a lot of people in US.
We did, yeah. We've had a lot of people infected, over 1 million in the US. And obviously, some of those folks passed away, nearly 60,000. It's interesting when we talk about this virus and this challenge and how it's handled. First of all, in the United States, it's important to remember that while we count ourselves as a country, which we are, we're very proud of that, different areas of our country have different experiences and different ways of doing things and different levels of infection in this particular case. So the 1 million number is staggering in terms of the people that have contracted the virus, but we have 325 million citizens, and we also have probably another 30 or 40 million people that are here that are either visiting, or tourists, are working here legally or illegally, whether they've gone through the process. So when you look at that 1 million, we're closer to that's out of 360 or 370 million people. Proportionally, it's not as bad as that huge raw number sounds.
Yeah.
And in our country, we found that there are pockets that are very impacted. The larger cities, New York in particular, we read about that all over the world. Detroit in my state, which is about an hour and a half from where I'm speaking to you now, had a lot of challenges with the virus, and other larger cities. We're coming out of it. There are places around the U.S. that are fully opening up today. There are other places like in my state in Michigan where we are over the next few weeks opening up. So some things are back to normal, and other things like restaurants and going into the office and malls are still closed up. I think tentatively they're planning to open May 15th. So we're coming out of it. It's been tragic, certainly from a medical perspective. And now that we are coming out of it, people are starting to think about what's next, what's the new normal, and how is it going to impact everybody economically.
I want to mention also that everyone can ask a question, take the opportunity to ask a question to our JCI World President, Scott GREENLEE, on the Facebook command. So, hi Walid, hi Mariam, hi Iman, everyone watching us actually. Let's talk a little bit about you, Scott GREENLEE. How did you live this period, which is very special? Yesterday I saw a photo. You were in a golf party, like a golf match with your friend, but keeping the social distance.
Yes, yes. So we, golf is a passion of mine. It always has been. And that's one of the first things that was allowed back open in my state of Michigan. In some states, I think it was never not an option, because you're outside, you're in the fresh air, you're getting some exercise. And on a huge golf course, it's very easy to stand 6 feet apart from whoever you're playing golf with. So
Yes.
that was a real pleasure to get out there and enjoy golf yesterday. I've been getting out. I've been doing walks around where I live, enjoying some of the nature. I have a lot of forestry and stuff behind my home, so I get to see deer and all sorts of animals running around. And so I've been out of the house doing that, and I've also done a number of errands and some volunteer food delivery and things for people that are older and maybe are more at risk for contracting something like this. So for me, it's been pretty much business as normal. As you know, I've been self-employed since 2003. I had worked with AT&T for 10 years. I had been part of that large company, that corporate mentality. And in 2003, when I was elected a JCI vice president, I decided I needed to leave the corporate world, because it's difficult to have a corporate job and then when you're assigned to Europe, go to Europe for a week and then come back for 2 or 3 weeks and then be gone again for 10 days and then go to the conference in Japan and just all the travel. So I took the jump and became self-employed. And so literally since about 2003, I have had very few years in my life where I've had to go into the office. There have been a couple times where I've had an assignment with our governor in the state of Michigan or with the attorney general of our state of Michigan where I've had an office. But for me, working from home is second nature, and getting out and taking those walks and, doing things to keep your mind sharp when you're working from home, having discipline, having a routine is pretty normal. So I haven't had a lot of interruption. I know a lot of people have, though.
That's not really the case of other people, because we were surprised with the confinement. People are still active outside home. And you said that you have the habit to work from home or from the office from 2003. So how to keep the motivation to work from home? Because it's not really affordable for us.
That is a really, really good question, and it's something that people are now being forced into because of the global pandemic and the things that we are going through. What I have found is there's a few things that are important to do when you're working from home. First, it's really important to have a disciplined mindset that you are working. So get up at the time you would normally get up. If you get up at 6 o'clock for work, get up at 6, take your shower, come downstairs, put on some clothing that's something other than your pajamas. There's a lot of funny things on Facebook memes and stuff, but actually, put on some clothing and adapt that business frame of mind. I think that's very important to stay in that routine and not sleep in until 7, 8, 9 o'clock and come down and not take your shower and stay in your pajamas and things like that. So treat it like it's a job, like it would be normally whatever you would do. I think then it's important to leverage technology. We're doing that today. You and I are thousands of miles apart on different continents, but we're having a good conversation.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that through JCI, through Kiwanis, which is another group I'm part of, through business, because I have a partnership with a company in Manila, the Philippines. I'm used to doing Zoom calls. I'm used to doing all sorts of different technology that allows me to communicate and allows me to see documents and allows me to have conversations or make presentations. Now I think the world is starting to see that, hey, this is something that is part of reality. You can't leave your house. You have to find other ways to do things. So I talk to a lot of people who are now telling me that they are surprised how easy the technology is, how that it's something that anybody can really do and learn and be comfortable with in a short period of time. So I think that that is something that's going to be part of our culture as we go forward. And when you think about the technology and when you think about working remotely, it really has a lot of benefits. First of all, you're not paying to have an office. So the owner, like I own my own consulting company, all of my people work from home. All my team are remote, other than in Manila, where I have an office, where my partners are mainly using the office and I do when I'm there. But here in the US, I don't have any rent costs. I don't have any insurance costs. I don't have any of those. I don't have to furnish an office because we all just work remotely and everyone reports into me on a regular basis. We also can save a lot of time. For example, if I'm getting in my car and driving an hour to a meeting, and then I have an hour meeting, and then I drive back for another hour, I've used 3 hours of time for 1 hour of productivity.
I agree.
Yeah. So I know that, like, I can make phone calls on the way and think about the meeting prep and all that, but it's just not as effective a use of time as if I'm here at home, we log on to Zoom, we have our meeting, then that's only taking an hour. It's not taking 3 hours. So it allows me to be more productive. Also, for people that are very concerned about the environment, you're burning less fuel when you're doing the travel. Maybe from a cost standpoint, you're not having to buy a meal out, so you can eat at home more economically and in many cases more healthy. So there are some real benefits to people working at home and kind of falling into a routine of being productive.
People used to be supervised at work. When you are working for your own company or you are entrepreneur, you supervise yourself. This is a bigger challenge. And when you talk, Scott, about discipline, is not really useful for everyone. So people maybe need to be supervised. When we wake up early in the morning, how to not be lazy to go work in the next room to you?
It's tough, and I think especially if you have a lot of distractions around in your home, if you have little children, if you have even pets, or a spouse or what have you. So I encourage people to set up their own work area where they can close a door and kind of shut themselves off, just like they're not home and they're at an office. I think it's important not to multitask too much. For example, you could put a load of laundry in, and then you could go and do some work on your computer. But if you've done that, then you've got to remember in a half hour or 40 minutes to move it into the dryer. So that's a distraction you wouldn't have at your office. So try and keep everything as office-like as possible. I also tell people you need a mentor when you're making this transition, if you're making it on a full-time basis or even in the meantime. So talking to people like myself that have the experience will help keep others focused. I think it's real important that folks put in a full day of work, because if we're becoming more efficient when we're working at home, that gives us more time to do more. So it shouldn't be a situation where you get up, you take your shower, you eat your breakfast, you're working at 8 o'clock or whatever normal time, and then because you've saved that other time, you're done working at 1 or 2. I would still tell people, find ways to be productive, find ways to get ahead on your goals, come up with new projects, new ways to do things, check in with your team members. And that's another thing. When you talk about people who aren't necessarily used to this, who might not have the right mindset or discipline, you can understand that and set up phone calls with them. most of the people that work for me with GREENLEE Consulting, they are very self-managed. But over the years, I've had situations where I've just known I need to do a morning phone call every day or every other day with this individual to make sure that they are on track. So as a CEO, as a president of a company, you have to know your people, and everybody acts a little differently. So when there is somebody, don't hold it against them. Just instead, find ways to help keep them motivated and make them more accountable. And for some people, that might be a phone call every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, where you're just saying, "Hey, how'd you sleep? Hope you had a good night. What have you got on your schedule today?" And moving on. For other people, I might not talk to them more than once or twice a week, believe it or not. But they're sending me emails and projects, and I know that they're working because of the workflow that I see. Another thing that's real important is to be detailed on your lists of things to accomplish. Easy to sit here and say, wow, it's 2 in the afternoon. I feel like I got a lot done today, so I'm going to knock off early and go watch TV or go do whatever. But that's not necessarily what you should do from a work productivity standpoint. So I always am making lists, and on those lists, I'm checking things off as I go. And I'll have a list of critical things that need to be done today. I'll have a list of things that need to be done in the next day or two, but are not critical. And then I'll have like a week out of stuff that I should do. And if it's a day and I've gotten through my critical things in 2 hours, and then I've gotten through the rest of the things in another 2 hours, I will start to look ahead and say, what is it that I've got to do on Wednesday or Thursday of this week? Because I've only been working for 4 hours. So what is it that I need to do for Wednesday or Thursday that will allow me to get ahead? And then I'll do those. And then I keep track and I cross them off, so that at the end of the day, I can look at it and have a tangible record that I have worked and I have been productive. And then, of course, at the end of the day, the last responsibility is to make the list for tomorrow, to update the list so that it's tracked. And different folks that work with me that have projects, they are emailing in reports and saying, hey, we got this and that done today. Tomorrow I've got a call with this client. I've got, this project that I'm going to get done. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about our big day on Friday. I'm working on that. So
nice stuff. So as I understand that it's all about managing priorities, maybe writing all the tasks that you have for the day. Are you using smartphone apps, or you write on papers your priorities or your tasks for the day?
Yeah, I'm kind of old school. I have them on my computer, but not using any particular app or what have you. I use Word documents and Excel spreadsheets, and send those around. And with folks that work for me, it's a lot of email back and forth. We still use a lot of email and text messaging and things like that, where folks are kind of reporting in that they have this or that done, or they've done as much of it as they can do, and now they're waiting for another team member to do part of the project. I do know there's a bunch of great apps out there and a bunch of great computer programs, and I've looked at a couple, and we'll probably switch over to something along those lines next year. This year with my business, it's a very busy year because we have elections and a good chunk of my business in the political world. So we're not going to do any major shifts this year, but maybe next year we'll do some looking at those different apps that are out there.
Okay, nice. Let's interact, Scott, with some people watching us. We have a question from Iman Ben Amr. She said, is there a new normal, or it is a behavior change for a defined period of time and then back to normality as we used to know?
What a great question, and thank you for the question. I think there are going to be a new normal, and I don't know what that looks like yet. But I think with this heightened awareness of this virus and people being concerned about other viruses and other pathogens that are out there and can infect people, that there will be some people who will not want to go back to the old way of doing things. There will be people that stay home a lot more, that work from home more, that interact with people more through technology. I think that on a larger scale, You will see events like they were talking on the radio this morning in the United States about sporting events, and how that we have a lot of these large American football games where 60 to 70 to 80,000 people gather in a stadium and are sitting very close to each other. And I think you might see everybody having to check their temperature on their way in. I think you might see that with airplane flights. I think some countries might start to do some of that regular temperature checking as you're arriving in their country, much more than they are now. I think that people will be doing more takeout and more eating at home versus eating, out in a crowded restaurant or a crowded bar. So I do think that's going to be the case. Now, there will also be people like myself that are more of a mindset that, we'll get through this and we'll be ready for whatever comes next. And, I'm ready to go out and go back to my old normal. But being more aware, maybe being more conscious of protections and hearing somebody cough and just doing a lot of those right health behaviors. But I don't think there's any way that everybody in the world is like myself. I think there will be a new normal. I think it will look with people more at home, taking more precautions, and that large venues will start to look a lot different.
Yeah, some people are reactive, others are more proactive for this special period. People still staying at home, actually, maybe for a few weeks in the future. And now, what are the tips that you can offer to us to be proactive and to develop our business, to enlarge our business network, maybe during this period using new technologies?
Well, that's a huge question. And while the virus, at least the first wave, because people are concerned that there will be a second wave when folks are out and in large crowds again, we don't know that. We know that has been the case with some viruses in the past, but it hasn't always been the case. So we don't know how that's going to go looking forward 1, 2, 3, 4 months. But what we do know is that the economic impact of this virus will last a lot longer than the virus itself, because there are so many small businesses, unfortunately, that are hemorrhaging money, and they have no income because they've been shut down. Yet they're having to pay their rent or they lose their store. They're having to pay their insurance. Some of them are not able to pay employees. So those people are out looking for other online remote type work they can do at home. And then they're not necessarily going to come back when the business has started. So you also have people that are my age and a little older that have built a business over time, have made some money, and have thought, boy, we've been closed now for 2 months or 3 months. I don't know how we'd put it together. I guess I'll just retire early. And then the business is gone, which will create a lot of voids in the marketplace, not just locally, but globally. I think that it'll also be an economic challenge when the unemployment grid catches up to larger companies. For example, the worry has been initially about your small businesses and the fact that they might not have enough resources to stay going. Well, let's think about General Motors, which is a very large car company based in my state. If people are on unemployment and people are not able to find work because companies, small businesses have closed, then they're not going to have enough money maybe to buy that new car later this year or next year. And that's going to be a large challenge for a larger company that then is going to have to adjust their forecast. And if they don't sell as many cars, they can't have as many people working in their factories. So then those people are going to become unemployed. And what types of things are those people not going to buy, or services are they not going to use? So it's really going to be a challenge economically. I think people need to embrace technology with work. I think people need to be creative and think of multiple ways to make money. A lot of people talk about having a side hustle, like I have my regular job, but then I'm also doing this or that as a way to make more money. I think people really need to scan opportunities and network and talk to folks around the world about best practices to come up with multiple streams of income, and then to keep those should something like this happen again. Another thing that I think is really important and really smart, I was talking to a guy from the Chamber of Commerce here in Lansing, Michigan yesterday, and we were talking about these small businesses that can't necessarily pay people the normal wage. I would encourage those workers, if they can, to still go to work and still volunteer and still try and support the business that's been employing them, even if they can't get paid, because I think then when the business comes out of it and reopens, the business will be stronger, and the owner or president or manager of the company will look at that loyalty and say, wow, you know, we used to have 15 employees. Because of the economic downturn, we're only able to have 10. But look at these two who volunteered, who stuck with us when we weren't able to pay. Like, those are the first two I'm going to keep. And then I'm going to decide who the other 8 are from our original 15. So I think people need to proactively stay engaged with their companies if they can, in any way they can, even if they're not getting paid or they're not getting paid as much as maybe they would normally.
So you're encouraging actually the managers to keep the teams, and the teams to work like a volunteer, to make sacrifice for that period, to keep going the companies and the enterprises, which is very important for the economic future side. I will try to translate the French question here. Yeah. So Habiba Ben Giza said that we have and we saw advantages for working from home or homework, which is very important. How can you explain some changes that we will face in the future in the world? Even a lot of philosophers said, like Noah Harari in the Financial Times, I think, and also Noam Chomsky said a lot of things about the future after the COVID-19. What's your own vision about that?
I think some of the working remotely and being social remotely is going to stick and going to be the new normal. I think that that'll be the case for efficiency, for financial and environmental concerns, and also just for the fear of viruses and what's out there. It's interesting, you know, I'm 52 years old, and I've seen a lot of things in that time, like SARS and H1N1 and, you know, different types of things. And so some of those are much more serious than what we're facing today, you know, from a numbers standpoint, if you will. And we've never shut down. We've never done this. Like this is such an anomaly that it's happened in this manner. So I think because of that, it shows that society is becoming more cautious and more concerned. And I see that when I talk to young people in their teens and their 20s, that they want to err very much on the side of caution versus people my age who are erring more on the side of let's get out there, let's see how it goes, let's monitor ourselves. You know, if we start coughing, if we start displaying symptoms, of course, we immediately start to become treated. But this is not this one is not a virus where, you know, half of the people who get it are passing away or anything even close to that. So I think that there's a tolerance for risk, but the younger people don't have as high a tolerance, I don't believe. And so I think that will create a new normal that is much more remote and much more inherently socially distanced than what we've been through in the past, and how that will impact businesses, families, NGOs, churches, and religious places of worship. All of these type of things is yet to be seen. The only thing I think I'm 100% confident in is it will be different, and it will be more socially distanced and more aware than it was last year.
We can consider that it's all about health, but also it's all about confidence, how to regain self-confidence and also confidence on others, because keeping the social distance is not really easy for us in the future, and maybe being back to the cafe, to the pub, it will be a big challenge for all people.
It will. And, that's the other side of the coin that we haven't talked about. We talk a lot about public safety and the fact that the virus is dangerous and that people are passing away because of the virus or because the virus is contributing to another medical issue. I think most of the people that have passed away have suffered from another medical issue. And the virus has made that issue worse and they've passed away. But one thing that we haven't talked about a lot is the challenges of isolation. In the United States, suicide has increased. People that can't come to grips with just being shut in and shut down, unfortunately, some of them are taking their own lives. The amount of drug, alcohol, and substance use and abuse has increased, and that will cause long-term societal problems, of course. There is domestic violence. There are those types of challenges that police departments are reporting they've seen an uptick on in the United States. And the suicide and the feeling like you have no way out feeling is probably going to continue longer than the virus because of the economic downturns. And if you work for a small company or if you own a small company and you put everything you have into it, and all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. There are going to be people that then come to their home and are isolated because they're afraid to go out and they don't have anything to go out to. And unfortunately, some of those people are going to make the wrong decision and think there isn't a way out. So that's a real problem. People are going to need to be social creatures. That's how we were created. We need each other. We need to talk to people. We need to interact, and we need to do that in person as well as through the smart use of technology, which we've talked about kind of earlier in the discussion. So this is something that's going to have to be addressed short term when we come out of this, and then long term in a responsible manner, particularly when we're dealing with something like this coronavirus, which is not something that is killing at a rate that a lot of other things have, and is not impacting people at a high rate that are healthy otherwise. It's interesting in the U.S. hospitals are actually receiving more government assistance on a patient that has the virus versus another patient. So if I go into the hospital and they list me as having pneumonia, they can get some assistance at a certain level. If they list me as having the coronavirus, they will get a higher level of compensation. If I'm on a ventilator or a respirator, they will get a higher level of compensation. So there's not been a real good way of counting who actually has it, which is one discussion. I'll tell you, I know some people that are sure they had it because they had all the symptoms in December, January, February, but they were young, they were healthy, they were in shape. They stayed home and got over it on their own if they had it. There are other people who are in the hospital who aren't tested, but they are told, yeah, you have the symptoms, so you probably have it. So those people are counted. And then there are other people who've passed away and they find that they are carrying the virus, even if they weren't displaying symptoms. They're finding that they had it in them, so they're being counted as coronavirus deaths. If you look in the U.S., the number of pneumonia deaths is down. Well, if you have pneumonia, you're more susceptible to get the virus. And if the hospital lists the virus as your primary illness, your primary cause of death, then the hospital gets more assistance than they would if they didn't do that. So there's a problem. I've talked to several of our elected officials that we need to come up with a way to truly know how many people, as best we can, have had the virus, and then how many people it was a cause of death, and then a primary cause of death. When somebody passes away, if God forbid I have a massive heart attack right now, and they're doing the autopsy tomorrow, and they go, oh, he also had the virus, he wasn't coughing, he didn't display any symptoms. The people around him, his family, were saying they had no idea.
Yeah.
It should not be listed as a coronavirus death. It should be listed as a heart attack. And there's a lot of confusion and a lot of different ways different states are doing that for different reasons.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I have here some questions coming from JCI Morocco, Muad Firas from JCI Tunisia, and also we have Tanwei Jian from JCI Aspak, I think. I will just try to summarize because it's the same question. Do you think that the crisis will be a promotion for new opportunities, and what will be the best new trends to start a small business after confinement?
That's a great question, and those folks are spot on with the way that they are thinking. So, first of all, necessity is the father of invention. I mean, that's a phrase that has been around for a long time. So there will be a lot of new ways to do business, and probably a lot of new businesses that come out of this crisis. I have always said, anybody who's heard me give speeches around the world, I've always pointed out that in any situation, no matter what that situation is, there are good things and there are bad things, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. So if it's your best day ever, that's great, but that's also the best day ever. So tomorrow's going to be worse, right? So it all depends on how you want to look at it. And if it's your worst day ever, well, that's awful and that's tragic and that's bad, but that means tomorrow is going to be better. So there is always a lot of opportunity, even in a negative, even in a bad situation. And I think in the United States, you are seeing a lot of telemedicine, a lot of teleeducation type services that are now coming out. We didn't talk about education aspects and the fact that, in the United States, at least, in many countries currently, there's a lot of money spent on education to have the school. There is a safety concern with having all the kids together. There is busing costs. There is food costs. There is all these different costs. Well, with people learning at home, maybe we see a shift in the way education's done around the world. That's something that's being discussed at a number of levels in a number of countries. So I think that, there will be a lot of new businesses and new ways to do things, and young entrepreneurs can take advantage of that by thinking about how to leverage technology best in their communities, starting things out, small at a local type level, and then seeing if it can expand into their country and globally. And I think the most important thing that they need to do is use technology. We've kept going back and back to technology, but we have all this stuff available now, and it's got to be utilized in these new business and entrepreneurial type of endeavors, because the technology will create an environment that will provide a safe feel for people that are concerned, but also an efficient feel, and be better for the environment in certain cases and better from a costing standpoint in certain cases. So I think young entrepreneurs should really innovate and think about ways to do things, think about ways to do things with technology at a distance.
Nice. Katia from JCI Brazil said Scott GREENLEE is always great. So that's a great comment. Muad is back with a question which is, I think, very important. He said, as you know, one of the biggest problems and challenges faced by NGOs in wherever in the world is how to collaborate and push policymakers to take actions and integrate association in decision making. Do you have some typical tips to give during the crisis and post COVID-19?
Yeah, I work with policymakers and elected officials and candidates running, not just here in Michigan, but throughout America and indeed into Asia some. And I can tell you that when you're trying to influence policymakers to change or to create something different or to put some kind of new standard in, the most important thing to do is to provide accurate and sound documentation as to why it should happen. It's great to sit back and say, hey, we should do things this way. But any type of change is typically pushed back on. People inherently aren't comfortable with change because it's new, it's something we're not familiar with, we don't trust. So when you're making that pitch to a policymaker, it's not just here's an idea of how things would go better, but it's the documentation of this is why, from a costing standpoint. This is how it could be implemented. This is why it will make our society safer, or it will create a better working environment, or it will assist in the safety of our children, or something along those lines, so that there's a foundation there on which the future can be built, and it will be better. And it could be better in a lot of different ways. So first, get the access, get the opportunity to meet with the policymaker or someone on their staff. And then secondly, have good data and good examples and kind of a roadmap of how it could be accomplished, so that you're not just throwing an idea out there and saying, there, go make it happen.
Very good. Habiba said, people to be creative need to good vibes and know their performance and how to profit from the energy and developing it, how people can improve their business with the fifth dimension. Yeah.
That's a great question, and that's something we are all working on, and we're all learning. I don't think, unfortunately, any of us, including May, have the answer.
Yeah.
But I think that really stems into a mindset type of discussion. And when you are taking on a task, or taking on a new theory, or taking on anything in your life, if you go into it with a mindset of it's going to be very difficult, I don't know if I can do this, I'm nervous about this, I'm scared, it's a new thing that I'm not comfortable with, your chances of succeeding are immediately lowered. So I think people need to be positive about the fifth dimension. People need to be positive about how technology and how our current situation is going to play into that, and really do their best to be creative and be innovative. I bounce back to that innovation thing quite a bit, because it's important, and life and the world is always changing. If this pandemic hadn't happened, things would be different, and that would create other ways to innovate. There's always ways to do things better. In fact, years ago in 2005 and 6, and working with my JCI president colleagues, Kevin Cullinane from Ireland and Lars Hosland from Denmark, we all worked together, and we all talked about a JCI tagline, and I made it my theme, and some other presidents did too. It was be better. And the whole concept of be better was that it applies to everyone, no matter what industry you're in, no matter in your family life, in your professional life, in your NGO life. And it has this main concept of no matter how good it is, if it's perfect, we can still analyze it, and we can still find a way to make it just a little bit better. So you never achieve a true perfection. And when you talk about the fifth dimension and innovating, it's how do we make it better? How do we do it better? How do we come up with more? How do we come up with safer? How do we come up with more practical? How do we come up with something that's more global in nature to serve our citizens and our communities? And taking an attitude that it can be done, that we have innovated our entire history of the world, and we can make it just a little bit better. By doing that, we'll get people a long ways to the goal.
Let's give the 15 last minutes to our biggest love, which is JCI, Junior Chamber International.
Absolutely.
You were JCI World President in 2007. Actually, when we look to the actions or to the projects of JCI during the COVID-19 time, we cannot really distinguish JCI from other associations and NGOs like Red Cross, like a Rotary Club, Lions Club, because people are focusing just on social projects in that period, and that's normal. But do you agree with that vision of JCI actually, or do you have another vision or something that you can suggest to JCI members in that period? Because I believe that JCI can do better.
Yeah, it can always do better, for sure. And I think one of the things that's great about JCI is it is such a diverse organization in terms of our membership, in terms of where we are around the world, and in terms of why people want to get involved in JCI. But I think we need to do our best to get ourselves back to the core mission of JCI. And I know that our current president, Itai, and last year's president, Alex, have talked a lot about the training, the leadership development, the opportunity to take a young person, 18, 19, 20, 25, 30, 35, 39, and through JCI, give them practical, real life experience so that they can then, at the age of 40, graduate, become an alumni, and go out and make the world around them a better place. You see, when this great organization was started over 100 years ago in the United States, it was for people that were of that age that needed to better themselves. They couldn't find work because they didn't have the right degrees from colleges. They didn't have the right experience, but they couldn't get experience because they couldn't get hired. So they went to the Chamber of Commerce and said, hey, we'd like to do projects. We'd like to help. And by helping, we'll do it for free. That'll give us experience so that we can then become more marketable. So I think that while we do a lot of social projects in JCI these days, while we do a lot of community orientation and helping out, while we do, there's chapters and JCI national organizations that have sporting events, that they do, or there are basketball leagues, or there are the golf leagues that are in Europe and things like that. All that stuff is great and all that stuff is important. But at the end of the day, what I try and encourage JCI members to do is say, how does this make our members better leaders? And how does it teach them and train them, and give them some skills that they wouldn't have had? Whether that's, you have this other stuff to get people involved and because they're interested. But at the end of the day, it's about training. It's about leadership development. It's about making young people today into stronger, more well-rounded leaders going forward. So focus on the leadership and the training and the business networking stuff.
Very good tips. Actually, JCI also is trying to make things or to change things. We remembered at a period we had the Nothing But Net campaign against the malaria. But now I didn't see anything about that. Maybe we were surprised. So we are not really maybe speedy reactive on the situation. What do you think about that?
So that was a program that came up the year that I was JCI president. Actually, in 2007, we had the discussion at the UN Leadership Partnership Summit in New York City. And one of our work groups came out with that as a tangible thing we could do. It was in line with the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. And I believe that we had adopted it through 2015. So we had worked from 2007 to 2015 with that being a internationally focused program of JCI. I think there are still some local organizations around the world that are passionate about that and are still raising money and still engaged. And I know, in fact, JCI USA still does some work with lobbying and encouraging our elected members of Congress and Senate to provide funding. But I think President Itai, in particular this year, has shifted a focus and made a focus about cancer and cancer research and what have you, and is asking all of our members to stand up to cancer and to be aware that that's something that impacts us all. The bottom line is there are so many good causes and so many things around the world, and all of them really are good causes. Like every one of these diseases should be funded and should be assisted and eradicated, hopefully, with some kind of long-term medical progression. But we at JCI are engaging there and taking on causes like that. The General Assembly approves, or that the president is passionate about, with the idea that our members will get leadership experience. So again, it kind of goes back to leadership. And I know that there were so many projects run around the world in the Nothing But Nets campaign. It gave our members experience in fundraising, in presentations, in dealing with the media to bring attention, in interacting with government leaders. It certainly helped them network. And those, again, are kind of our core principles. Our core business is to do those type of things for young people, 18 to 40 years old. And the way we do them, whether it's working with Nothing But Net, whether it's working to find better progress and more cures against cancer, or any one of another million causes around the world, is kind of secondary. We're the only organization that states' right, was founded to make our members stronger and better. All the other organizations, that's not like the root cause. And I think sometimes we lose track about that because we get very passionate about different things that we see chapters and national organizations doing. And at the end of the day, I'll circle back to my previous answer and I'll say, it's all about the member. It's all about taking a young person into JCI, considering JCI like a leadership factory. So they come in when they're 18 or 20 or 25 or 30, and they go through this time period where they get different experiences, they meet different people, they have different trainings, they have different leadership, situations that they're granted that they might not be able to get in their businesses or in educational type settings, so that when they are 40 and they're out of the factory and they're an alumni of all that, they're better leaders.
What do you think about recruitment in that period? What kind of members do we need after the confinement?
Well, I think we need to, again, be aware that some people aren't going to be as comfortable with attending things in person. So I think more online or remote type of chapters or LAMs will be brought out. I think that in terms of what type of members, I've always said anybody, any human being, 18 to 40 ought to have the JCI opportunity. So I'm a guy who didn't have any college in his background. I had a very basic job at a shopping mall. When I started in JCI, when I was 23, I was kind of floundering around, wondering what to do with my life. So I was kind of a good example of a product of this organization where, because of JCI, I got to network with some people in my town that I never would have met. I never would have been in the circle. And then that gave me a chance to get a better job. And that gave me a chance to get another better job. And then I started meeting people from around America, and I got better mentors. And those mentors would coach me and give me ideas to do things. And then globally, again, my great friend Lars Hajland was really a key mentor in me going out and opening my own company and having the confidence to do that, and talking to him about how he had done that over the years. And none of that would have been possible without, at the age of 23, saying, yeah, I'll join my local JCI group. And I didn't join for any of that. I joined because my local group had a golf league and did a big golf fundraiser every year where we had professional golfers come into my town and raise money for charity. So I had no idea I was going to get leadership opportunities. I didn't even want to be on my local board. I thought that stuff sounds too formal and too fancy. I'll just join and I'll do the golf league and I'll do the golf fundraiser. And I'm pretty into golf, as you can tell. So that's why I joined. And then, thank God, 16 years later, I wound up being elected JCI president. And all of the leadership and connections and learning that happened in the meantime, as well as the opportunity to give back, because I was raised in a household where I was taught, no matter how tough things were, there were people out there that were in worse situations, and you have to give back, and you have to be involved, and you have to coach younger people on leadership, and you have to donate to worthy causes and things like that. So JCI gives every person, no matter what their lot in life is, no matter where they live on our 7 wonderful continents that make up our wonderful world, our wonderful planet called Earth, they all need to have the opportunity to join JCI and to be part of this active, great organization.
As John Kennedy said, Harvard University gave me an education, but JCI gave me an education for life. And that's a real example that you saw, like what Scott said about his career. It's very important. Last question, and I will give you the floor to conclude our meeting today. Wasim said, hello, dear President. Is there a specific type of training you think we need to take after the crisis?
I think after the crisis, we need to do all of the trainings, but we need to look at them with a technology focus. So I think that there is not a particular course or a particular way to do things that is going to be most important globally, certainly. But I think everything that we look at, we need to look at how can technology play a role. So trainings that I might suggest, there's a lot of them that are online that are free, are things like how to best use technology, and maybe you learn a new skill during this time when you're at home, and you're not out doing as many things. Maybe use that time to read up on something or come up with a new way to do things, and use that going forward and apply that to regular trainings, whether it's public speaking, whether it's organizational management, whether it's some other form or discipline of leadership. So I think that's the most important thing. Technology, technology, technology. In your head, stay positive and figure out ways to capitalize on what is overall a very bad situation. Do that through innovation.
Senator Walid Bouraoui said you are a member of Kiwanis. Do you suggest to JCI senators to join such organizations like Lions Club, Rotary Club, etc. after the JCI path or JCI journey?
I do. I mean, all those NGOs are good organizations. I particularly recommend Kiwanis, one, because I'm a member of Kiwanis, of course, but Kiwanis and JCI have a formal structured partnership that was started in 2016, 2017 area by President Pascal Diquet, President Don Hetzel, and their corresponding Kiwanis leaders. So there's actually a formal structure there where we are working together at the global level, and more of that done locally would be great. But any of these organizations are good. I just encourage people to be active, to get involved, to find a cause they're passionate about, and to give their all to it.
I want to thank all members watching us from JCI Nepal, Malaysia, JCI Philippines, JCI Turkey, JCI Tanzania, JCI Morocco, JCI Tunisia, of course. I want to thank you a lot, Scott. It was a big honor to host you on this meeting, on this live talk. You are really an inspiring leader. I know you from like 12 years. This brotherhood and friendship that we keep together online, and also when we met together on the World Congresses of JCI. The stage is yours. So last message for people watching us from outside JCI and for JCI members, and thank you again for offering us this great opportunity.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for reaching out, because anytime I have a chance to interact with you and all the good things that you're doing to make the world a better place, I appreciate. So thanks for making me part of this that you're working on. You know, in closing, I would just really encourage people, again, find the positives, focus on the positives, understand that what we're going through right now is a challenge. It has some negative effects, but from those negative effects, we will, as a human race, emerge stronger, more versatile, and with better knowledge going forward. So understand all is not lost. We'll be stronger in the long run because we've gone through this. And a quick message to those that are not familiar with JCI. We've talked a lot about JCI in this conversation because that's how we've come in contact with each other, and it's a huge global network of nearly 200,000 active people in 125 countries worldwide, but more than that, about 12 million alumni, presidents and heads of state, and just all sorts of CEOs and leaders and captains of industry. So if you're watching this today and you enjoyed it at all, or even if you didn't, because I'm not always the most enjoyable person in the world. So no matter what you think, take the time to go to jci.cc, www.jci.cc. Support the organization if you're over 40, and if you're under 40, really take the time to connect with a local organization. It changed my life many years ago when I joined at the age of 23. I'm so blessed that I did. And I promise you, through membership, you will also have a host of experience, opportunities, mentors, things open up to you that you would never have if you don't take that chance. So that's my final pitch, and just wishing everybody the best, hoping we all get through this as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. And by that, I mean not just the virus, but the economic challenges that will arise, which I think will last longer. Stay positive, have fun, and thank you all so very much for taking your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Scott Greenlee, 2007 JCI World President, also President of Greenlee Consulting Company. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to make an announcement before closing. On Wednesday, I will host ITF and JCI Senator, JCI Portugal founder, Felipe Carrera, on Wednesday, so be there. And also, I will host Catherine Brequignac from JCI France, who is also a great ITF and senator. We'll talk about new tools for trainers after the confinement and using technologies, quality level, and other stuffs. The big announcement is on Monday, next Monday, JCI Secretary General Kevin Hinn will be my guest on next Monday by night from Monaco. So I'll be happy, and I appreciate also that you will join. Thank you again, Scott. I wish you a nice day, and it was amazing. You'll find this meeting or this live talk on my YouTube channel, Faris Ben Souilah. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.